Okay, we're up to Ayin Tes Amid Beis, the last Mishnah on the page. This Mishnah is where Gitin meets Ksubis and Yavamis. Yeah, this Mishnah is the Mishnah that meets Ksubis and Yavamis. Just as a means of introductory statement, famous Mishnah at the end of Yavamis. If a woman's told her husband dies by an Eid Echad, she marries a second person based upon that, and the original husband showed up. We said Teisi mizeh umizeh. She has to leave the first husband, the second husband, and she can't get married to the first husband. She can't remarry the first husband, right? The second husband, she's with like an Eishes Ish, because she was never divorced because the husband was still alive. And the first husband, because she was mizana with another man. And you basically lose a lot. She loses a ksuba, she loses mizayna, she loses all a bunch of what? A bunch of takanas d'rabbanan that they made, because she didn't check well into this matter, and we usually say Esha Daiko Mitzvah. That was the Mishnah in Yavamis. So in this Mishnah, we're gonna explain a get that she married upon, and the get was not a good get, and as a result, she's going to end up in that same scenario as that woman in Yavamis who went ahead and married based upon the testimony of an aide that her husband died, and it turned out her husband was alive. So that's the backdrop to understanding the Mishnah. And we'll go through the whole Mishnah. It's a very long-winded Mishnah, and the first part is more ksubis, a little Yavamis ksubis, the latter part is all Yavamis. Right. See, this is one of the unique Gemaras that where the Mishnah is more difficult than the Gemara. Right. Says the Mishnah, Kasav l'shem malchus she'eino hagenes. If in the get, they used to have to write the get, they'd have to write from the date of the malchus, that of the current malchus. And instead of writing that, they wrote a different one. This person is in Bavel, and it's during the malchus of Paras. The Paras went ahead and they overcame the Babylonians. And during the malchus of Paras, they dated the get based upon the years of the malchus of Rome. We're going to see why it's called the malchus she'eino hagenes. The Shemalchus Madai, the Malchus of Madai, the Shemalchus Yavan, right? Well, these right? These are not the Malchus that are current. Lebinyan Abayis, Lechurbin Abayis, dated from the date of when they built the Beis Hamikdash, or dated from the date that they destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, right? In these cases, well, the get's not a good get. Hoye b'Mizrach, if he was in the east, because of the Ma'ariv, and he wrote in the west. The Ma'ariv was in the west because of the Mizrach. The halacha is Teitze mizeh umizeh. She would go ahead and have to leave each one. Teitze mizeh umizeh. The first husband and the second husband not be able to go back to the first husband. Rashi says, Teitze mizeh umizeh. In Nisas beget zeh, if she would remarry, marry based upon this get, Teitze min harishayin umin hasheni. The tzricha get sheni min harishayin, the get min hasheni. She need a second get from the first husband because the first one wasn't good, and a get from the second husband. V'afa pisha kedusha sheni lo havi kedushin, even though the second marriage was not a marriage because she was never divorced from her first husband. So why would you require a get from the second husband? That we're worried that the first person divorced her, get gomer, v'nasa l'sheni, v'nimsa eishes ish yoytze b'lo get. So here's the concern. She's married to Ruvain. Ruvain gives her this get that is listed wrong. It's the wrong malchus, or it's east-west. She then marries Shimon. This get is not a good get. The halacha is teitzi mizeh umizeh. She has to leave both of them. Okay, meaning she needs another get from the first husband because the first one wasn't good, and she needs a get from the second husband. Question: if the first get wasn't good, she was never married to the second husband. After all, she wasn't. If someone's mekadesh your wife, it's not typhus. So why would you need a get from the second husband? Because we're concerned that people might say that the first get was a real good get, and she really was married to the second fellow, and she's really married to the second fellow, then what? Then she would require a get. We'd say that if she doesn't receive a get, people will think that a woman can leave without getting a get. Therefore, to avert that problem, that concern that people can say that a woman could leave without a get, we get a symbolic get that's not really a get from the second husband. That's Teis Mizeh. Okay, now, here begins the fun. Teis Mizeh, Mizeh, but Tzricha get Mizeh, Mizeh, you need to get from both, right? Now, according to Rashi, fellas, it's the way we said it. She's still married to the first husband, and the second husband is the not real husband. Tosfos disagrees. Tosfos says the first, this is only a get, this is really is a good get. It's only the Rabbanim were metaken. So really she was divorced from the first husband, and she's really married to the second husband. So Tosfos learns the opposite of Rashi. Tosfos, the bottom Tosfos, guys, look at the bottom Tosfos. 2 lines from the Avol Hacha, look the last line at the bottom of the Tosfos on Avol Hacha min ha-Torah tzricha get misheni. Min ha-Torah, she needs to get from the second husband. So get Gama Hoya Oisai Shagiris Midarishain. Midaraisa was a good get from the first husband. The Ain Apostle El Midrabanan was only Psil Darabanan. So really she was divorced from the first one, and really the second one was married. So therefore, Rashi and Tosfos are arguing across the board. Tremendous nafkaminas in halacha. We will go with Rashi's pshat, guys. Okay, we will go to Rashi's pshat that she's still married to the first one, so thus the second husband wasn't a marriage, and that is a get only to avert the problem that people might say a woman can go free without a get. Okay, very good. Vein lo like ksuba, she doesn't get ksuba. V'loy peris, she doesn't have the schus of peris. What does that mean? The Gemara, this is where we meet ksubas. In ksubas, we said that the husband gets the peris from the nichsim iloig. Why? Because then he will go ahead and redeem her if she gets captive. That was that's the nichsim iloig. Why do you eat the peris of the nichsim iloig? Because if she gets captured, he'll redeem her. In this case, if she gets captured, he doesn't have to redeem her. So loy peris, she doesn't get the schus of the peris, which is the redemption in case she is captive. V'loy mizaynos, that the kind of mezainis that she eats from the estate, no. V'loy blois, the clothing and that she gets, that she brings in and wears away, we cancel, she doesn't get that. V'loy alzeh, right? If not v'loy alzeh, not on either one, not the first one and not the second one. In not la mizeh, she takes any one of these things, the ksubis or the mezainis, tachser, she have to return it. The hadvlad mamzer mizeh umizeh, and the vlad would be a mamzer from what? From each one. So let's go with Rashi, guys. Outside. Look, again, this is all things we should know. According to Rashi, who's she still married to? The first husband. So therefore, if she marries a second man, she's an Eishes Ish. So the child from the second marriage is clearly a mamzer, right? As we discussed in the Masechta Yevamis, a mamzer means that if it's a union that's a chayiv misa or krisis or misas bezdin, that makes the mamzer. So therefore, the second one was with an Eishes Ish. So now what happens, fellas? She goes back to her first husband and now has children from her first husband if they have been married to the second husband, right? So that would be a mamzer d'Rabbanan. That is not really the first husband. The children she has afterwards is what is mamzeris d'Rabbanan, right? Good, understand? Because again, she really was never married to the second husband, so therefore it's not an Eishes Ish. There's no that the Gemara says in Yevamis Naftzad Aleph. The Gemara Daf Peites, excuse me. The Gemara says there that this is a mamzer d'Rabbanan from the first husband. And if he's a kohen, he can't be metama to either one of them. I'm wondering how could you marry the second one and she's a gerusha? I was thinking out loud. I didn't research this, but again, the first husband, clearly she could marry, it's a kohen. Now we're going to say that she got divorced using this get that's not a good get. How could she marry the second husband? A kohen cannot marry a gerusha. A kohen cannot marry a gerusha. I just thought of it recently, like this second. So it's a question.
Oh wait, she can marry her. Isn't the machlokas whether if the kedushin works or not?
You mean Kedush and Typhus?
Yeah.
I guess so. I mean, I don't, really see. Okay. Have to say something like that. Weiter. Usually, because Ava, we said that a person can get his wife finds something, he gets it. In this case, not. These are all takonis of ksuba that any working that's money she makes, they would not get. They would not have the rights to go ahead and take off a nidarim. These are all rights that a normal husband has. If she's a bas yisrael, nifselis min kahuna, she would have the din of a zayna. Remember, a zayna can't marry a kohen. She can marry a kohen because she's what? She's a gerusha or somebody. Okay, bas levi min meiser. If she's a bas levi, we would cancel her that she would not be able to eat meiser rishon. Bas kohen min truma. She's a bas kohen. She would not go back to what eating truma. It says 3 times by Saita. It says nitma 3 times. One us to bal, one us to boil, one us to truma. The Yoshim Shalzev, Yoshim Shalzev, Yoshim Ksubasa. And the Yoshim of this one and this one will not inherit a Ksuba. Now, she has no Ksuba, so how can they inherit the Ksuba? So, guys, I bring you back to Ksuba's Bottom Dichrin. One of the things that everyone always forgets. What is Ksuba's Bottom Dichrin? Okay, for some reason, I'm also included in it. But here's the din of Ksuba's Bottom Dichrin. A man's going to go ahead in the following. He wants to marry off his daughter. He's going to give her a nice dowry. What's going to happen if the woman gets married, has children, then the woman dies? Who's going to inherit her? The husband's going to inherit, right? And now the ksuba of that family is going to pass over to a strange family because the man's going to remarry and have other children. Those other children are going to divide the estate from the dowry of the Zayda of the first kids. So what they made a ksuba called ksubas banim dechrid, ksubas of the male children. That if a woman dies, her children would inherit the ksuba. If a woman dies and the husband remarries, so in order to facilitate that, the dead wife's father should give a dowry to the woman before she marries, he'd wanted to ensure it stays within his mishpacha. So that's called ksuba of bottom different of male children. So that they wouldn't get. In other words, that whole halacha would not apply in this situation. And that's what it means. When Yoshim Shalzev, Yoshim Shalzev, Yoshim Ksubasa. When Mesu Achiv, Shragi, or Peyam and Aleph, 3 lines from the top. When Mesu Achiv Shalzev, Achiv Shalzev, Chayzim Lemiyavim. And if they die, there's chalitza, but there's no yibum. Now, that's by the ksuba where the Shem Malchus guys. That was by ksuba where you didn't put the Malchus in, or you didn't directionally. You were challenged. You were east, west, west, east. How about this one? Shinoi Shmoyu Shma. You don't write the right names. Shemira, not the right city. Teitzi Mizeh Mizeh. Again, and she remarries based upon this get. She has to leave the second husband, and she can't go back to the first husband. And everything we mentioned before, like Paris, like Mazonis, like Ksuba, all these things would apply. Okay, that's the end of Ksubas. That's where Gitin meets Ksubas. Now we're going to Gitin means Yavamis. Okay, let's go back to the first Mishnah in Yavamis. Guys. Don't worry, we won't spend too much time on it. A man gets married, dies, his wife falls to Yibum. If he has 2 wives, the man dies, so one falls to Yibum. They both fall to Yibum. Once one Yibum is performed on one of the 2 wives, the other one is free. You don't have to go ahead. Bias echad bottom. You only have to go one bias and not 2. So once you go ahead and do Yibum to one or the 2 wives, the other one's off the hook. What happens if one of those 2 wives was an erva? The classic case. A man marries his niece. He has one brother. He has one brother, and a man marries his niece, and he has another wife. So you have a man's daughter is married to his brother. That's his niece, right? It's his daughter is married to his brother, and he has another wife. Consequently, his brother dies. Falling in front of that man is his daughter and his Hatzara. Since you can't do Yibum to the daughter, the Erva patters the mitzvah of Yibum. It also patters the Tsaris Erva, the rival of the Erva. And we said there were 15 cases of that. Good. I gave you the first case, and that explains everything. Good. So now, if that scenario arrives, if these tsaros go, finisu. So a man's daughter falls in front of him, and the tsara goes and marries somebody else. V'nimsu elu islandis, and the daughter turns out to be an islandist, meaning that what? That it was a mekach tois, and the marriage wasn't a marriage. Nimsa, the tsara, fell to yibum. Right? And what happens? She's now married to somebody else. Teitzi mizeh umizeh. She would have to leave the second husband, umizeh, and the first husband. And everything we spoke about, all the things over here that we spoke about would apply. All the things we spoke about over here would apply. Now, this is not so pashut. This is not so pashut because she's only a chayve lavim. She's a shemeres yavam. So look at Rashi, fellas. Holchu hatzare shel aroyos. The tsaris erva in our case of the daughter. V'nisu l'shuk, and she marries somebody else. V'nimsu ha'aroyos islandess, and the daughter turns out to be an islandess. V'gloi milsa shahay kedushay hameis b'tois. Nimsa, that the niece that was married was never really married to the brother. So falling in front of the father is only one woman, not his daughter, because that kedushin was never a kedushin to the second brother because it was an islandess. And now the other one, she married somebody else. They were never saraseva. And this fact, the relationship did not pattern that sorrow for chalitza. She has to leave the Baal that she married. The Teitzim in a Yavam, and she has to leave the Yavam. In other words, if you're telling me all these things happen, that meaning the children from here will be mamzerim, why in the world would the children here be mamzerim, fellas? We know, we paskin like Rav Shimon Amsuni, that mamzeris is when the union is chayve mises bezdin krisus, meaning when the kedushin is not toifis, then the union is a mamzer. Over here, she's shemeres yavam. In other words, there's a zika that attaches her to the brother of the dead person, and therefore she can't marry to the street. And in fact, this is the one place we'll say kedushin is not typhus by Chame Lavan. This is the one place we'll say it. The Kiva, however, is of the opinion that kol chayve lavim, the union from that will be what? Will be a mamzer. So when it says over here, teitzi mizeh mizeh, you have to leave the one she married because he wasn't permitted to marry her because she was shemeres yavam, and you have to leave the yavam, right? Because she married another person, and teitzi mizeh v'chol, and everything we just said applies. What is everything we said? That it's a mamzer from the second husband and mamzer from the first. That doesn't apply. Only according to Rabbi Akiva it doesn't apply, because according to us, shemeres yavam was a chayve lavim. The union, the child would be a pogum. The child would not be what chayve not be a mamzer. Okay, so we have one case. That first case is where she was off. There was no zika whatsoever based upon an erva. However, there was a change because she turned out to be an islandess. The halach is not like that, fellas. By the way, we had the sugya in the Saita. Hakoina says Yevimdoi, v'holchat sarasa v'nisas la'acher. Someone marries his Yevama, right? So another regular case. You got two women, neither one is an erva. He marries one, he doesn't. The other one's free. Again, bayis echad u'boina vein boina shtei batim. And after she leaves, the one he married was an islandist. So the same scenario, however, right? There was Yibum performed. He married this one, right? He married this one, and in the first case, he didn't marry anyone. However, you find out the one that he married was an islandist, and therefore he had to do Yibum to the one that married somebody else. The Gemara is going to ask, why do you have to tell me two cases of Yibum? Again, in the first case, there was no Zika. In the second case, there was Zika. Cost of Sefer get leish, the Shayva leisha. The man goes ahead, the Sefer writes a get, and he gives the get to the husband, the Shayva leisha, and he gives the receipt for the ksuba to the wife. The Tov and doesn't get leisha, and mistakenly, the Sefer gives the get to the isha, the Shayva leish, and the right. It gives the Tov doesn't get leisha, the Shayva leish. V'nasu zelazeh. And what happens is they go ahead and she gives the get to him and he gives the shayva to her. So she was never divorced. I mean, he has to, the sefer giving the get to the woman doesn't make a divorce. The husband has to give it to her. And he mistakenly, without reading it, thinking that it was a receipt, he gives it a ksuba, he gets that back, but he's getting back his get, and she's getting, what? And she's getting, she's getting a shayva, not a get. Right? He thinks he's giving her a shayv. Anyway, in this last case, in La'altar, we'll see what that means in the Gemara, Yatza, Ein Zaget, and La'achazman, Yatza, how does that get? If it comes out Yatza, if it comes out La'altar, Yatza immediately, then it's not a get, right? If La'achazman comes out, then it is a get, because like Kali Menush, Minarisha, La'abitz, Sheni, the second one does not have the power to go ahead and override this close to the Sheni. So we had a very, very long Mishnah. And the commonality of the Mishnah was cases where you married incorrectly a second husband, creating a scenario, a terrible sequence of events where you're going to have to leave both husbands, not get a ksuba, not get peiris, not get bezainas, not get begodim, children mamzerim. You're going to be like the, as we say in Yiddish, Benji would tell us, and Kenny would substantiate it. Gahak tzaris, right? There you go. You have to gahak tzaris.
Ladies, in those cases, it all could be avoided if she tossed the get. Then nobody be the wiser, right? In other words, she got the get legitimately, and then she just tossed. She never looked at it.
There's no solution over here.
No, but she doesn't know. It's you'll never know whether it was the wrong city, cases like that.
Again, we're talking about what you do know, Hesh.
Okay, I'm just saying hypothetically, it's better to don't look at it. I
don't think so. I think the Eidim Mesira would have to read it, and again, it's problematic because there was a concern over here that she should have read the get. Rashi says, in other words, she's an honest over here. What did she do wrong? And the answer is she has to read the get. So your scenario would not be true. She has to read the get. No, as you say, don't read the get. I got to get towards it. She'd have to read the get. Just like by an Ashish Ish, if the husband's dead, we say that all this happens to her because Isha Daiko Mitzvah. In other words, before you get remarried, you're Cheskes Ashish Ish. We know that by now, right? Tomato and Ashish Ish is the biggest heter in the world, right? All the shalos of Igunis. So when they say we say that Adam will believe Adam, even women and even Avad, all in the scenarios, it's also because she knows she better check it out. Because again, if she's not, she's really of kahak tzaras. So too over here, a woman to avoid any of these possibilities should read the get beforehand.
Yeah, but she probably doesn't know about the halachas, to the wrong city, that kind of stuff.
Again, you're surmising that, but again, from the fact that the Mishnah is saying this, that obviously she's at fault.
Okay.
You're trying, I understand what you're doing. You're saying based upon contemporary women who know nothing in terms of get, like, shemi. Listen, you open up a get and you see it doesn't say your name. You don't got to be a rocket scientist.
Right.
It doesn't say you're a city hesh. You don't got to be a rocket scientist. Now you say, 1 second, I'm living in Bavel You open up the get and it says underneath instead of saying the United States, it says underneath the People's Republic of China. Hesh, I mean, put it in those terms, Hesh, you can understand clearly why she's at fault.
Okay.
You hear? I'm saying, so tossing it's not going to help. Okay, so again, that's the first scenario. That was basically the first scenario. And you lose all these things. And again, tremendous amount of things. Then we get a second scenario where we said, Shemi Roy, we didn't say the problem was the problem was that it was Shemalchus. The second scenario was where Shem Eroy he changed his name, her name, same thing applies. And then we had the third and fourth scenarios by Yevamis. And the final scenario was where the cipher messed it up, gave it a get, and we got mixed up the get and the shayver. Okay, so let's go through each case. The first case, you're in Bavel, Malchus Paras, you're underneath Paras, now the Persians, and it says if you wrote in the get, the year, the date from the Malchus of Rome, it's no good. Now, why it was called Rome was called My Malchus Sheina Hagenes? Why was it called Malchus Sheina Hagenes? Malchus or Ramoyim. This refers to the Romans. But my correlate Malchus Sheina Hagenes. Why do we call it a Malchus that's not proper? You should name them like Ksav like Lashon. They don't have their own Ksav. They don't have their own Lashon. Rashi says that it was. I think they spoke Italian. It was like I don't know. The Roman Empire was a conglomerate of many different states. It's called Gagoyim. The Ramban says in Parshas, the beginning of Parshas Lech Lecha, when the Perek Yudalid, he says that the kingdoms there, the four kings that attacked the five kings, the last one was Sidl Melech Goyim. And he goes, that symbolizes the last Golas, which is Malchus Edom. And Goyim is Malchus Edom because they were made up of a multitude of nations. So again, they didn't have their own unique language. That's Rashi. Tosfos said that it seems that Chachmas Yevonis, they used to speak, and they didn't speak Chachmas Yevonis. Kings had special language unique to them. Over here, it was a nation that didn't have its language. According to Tosfos, it was a special language unique to kings that it didn't exist. But anyway,
I think the Romans actually spoke Latin. They were the
okay. Yeah, whatever it is, it's considered Malchus Hagenes. That's not the language of the. Okay, anyway, if they Malchus Gitin, why would it be talking that you have to write from the year of the reign of the certain king? They Shalom Malchus, right? So if you look at Rashi, fellas, Mishum Shalom Malchus, go down a little bit. Sheilanu Shalom Imahem, that we should have peace with them. Sheyomru, they'll say Chashuvim Anu Beinehem. We're chashuv in the eyes of the Jews. Shekoisvin Shtaroseim B'Shmeinai. They go ahead and Misheminu. They go ahead and write the shtaris when B'Sheminu, when we were appointed king. In other words, they're going to see and say, look, they give the Jews are, even though Ambadad Yeshev, they have their own halachas, they get under our skin by being a separate nation. But the bottom line with the shtar, they're makabel that we are what, that we're important because they date the shtar from when we began reigning. Okay. Now, Fred the Gemara, Umishim Shalom Malchus Teitzei Bavad Mamza. So you're telling us, is this a good get? Yeah, it's a good get. Why isn't it acceptable? Because of Shalom Malchus. That's a din d'Rabbanan. So you're telling me if this woman has a get that's dated based upon the beginning of the Roman Empire, when she's living in the beginning of should be dated from the beginning of the Persian Empire, you're going to tell me it's really midaraisa a good get. But midrabanan teitzi vavad mamza, you're going to say the vad from the second parent, according to Rashi, from the second child marriage is a mamza. That's very schwer. So it's going in. We're going to say that. Ramei l'tamei. That's Ramei according to his reasoning. Dama Rav Hamnuna mishmei deula ama ima oyeha Ramei kol mishana mimapeya shetov chachamim begitin avlad mamza. Anyone who goes ahead and deviates from the matbeya, literally the coin that the chachamim minted in Gitin avlad mamzer. In other words, here's the pshat. We know that the chasab sefer krisis v'nosam b'yadai. He has to write a sefer krisis and give it over to her hands. Now, what constitutes a sefer krisis? The chachamim decide what a sefer krisis is, and the chachamim decided that you have to go ahead and count and list in the get from the reign of the current kingdom, not somebody else. So Einochinami, it's not a good get. The concept of get is a good get. Over here in this case, the Chachamim, they decide what constitutes a get. And they decided that you have to go ahead and start dating the get and plating the get from the time of what of the, not the date the get was written. The get was written, but you have to count, from the time that the meaning of that particular Malchus was. Now, we said a bunch of things in the Mishnah, fellas. We said Malchus Rome, Malchus Yavan, Malchus Madai, Beis Hamikdash, destruction. Why did you have to give so many possibilities? Once you don't list Malchus Paras, Endik, that's it. It has to be the right one. So who cares about all the wrong ones? In other words, mashma, one of the wrong ones could have been okay, correct? Or else why are you giving me a whole listing? Just simply say you have to go ahead and list from the beginning of the Malchus Paras. Zehu. Suicha, you got to tell me each one. If you would tell me the Romans, Mishum de Malchia, at the time of Paras, there was a Malchus of Rome. It existed. It wasn't in charge of Judea yet, but it did exist. Malchus Madai, Malchus Yavan. Hava, Malchus Madai and Malchus Yavan, which are already gone already. I would say whatever was. And therefore, so they can't be angry at you guys, right? They can't be angry at you. Whatever was. So who cares? They can't be angry. So therefore, I would say, it's not Akpada, and therefore it should be a good get. The reason why it's not a good get, because in fact it was a Malchus. Okay, it's a Malchus, right? And Fibalta was a Malchus. It's Choshev, and if you're not going to give. If you're going to give, in other words, if you would say from the beginning of the reign of Joe the Barber, the Melech's not going to care about that. From the time Joe the Barber opened his store, who's Joe the Barber? But once you go ahead and tell the Melech Paras, from the reign of Paras, then I'm not already, right? Because we took care of them, we overcame them, but they're a Malchus. So therefore, there I would say there's Akpada. Avabinyan Abayas, I would say Mada Hava. So in other words, it happened. It's already gone already, and therefore, since it's destroyed, there will be no jealousy, right? The Amri Kamatri Shavchayo. The Melech says, 1 second, we're ruling, and still they're busy giving shvacha when they built the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, there'll be hakpada on the Melech of Paras, and therefore it's not a get. Again, guys, what's the rule of thumb? The whole reason we're writing this is there should be Shalom Malchus. So each one of these, there's a svar to say there won't be Shalom Malchus. By Modai Yavan, that there won't be Shalom Malchus because they're giving credibility to something that once upon a time was a Malchus. To Edom was existing Malchus. To Bnei Beis Hamikdash, they're remembering the good times and not giving cover to us. Al Churbin Abayis Tzarahu Eimaloi. But we're mentioning the time of destruction of Beis Hamikdash. Maybe this king of Paras will laugh and say, "What? They're not giving cover to anybody, right? They're not giving cover to anybody." Okay, and therefore it was like Litzuure. The whole purpose of this was to be mitzar. So I would say in that case, right, they're not giving cover to anybody. I would say not giving cover to anybody. So I would say it's not chashiv and kamashmul that what. Once we mentioned the Beis Hamikdash, even we mentioned the Tsar, it would be the kings would find that problematic. Okay, so again, the first thing in the Mishnah was a get that was written incorrectly because it was not dated according to the current Malchus. In that case, they were in Bavel, and the Malchus Paras. It's void. In fact, a very powerful question: if it's kosher deraisa and only voided because of Shalom Malchus, why would the children be mamzerim? And we said the Mishnah goes according to Rabbi that anyone who's mishanim and Rabbi shetavah chacham magitin teitzev avad mamsa, because this is not a get, and therefore the chum decided what a get is. This is not a get, and therefore you go free. Why do you have to list each one down the line? You have to list Rome because there'd be jealousy because the Romans were in power. You have to list Madai and Yavan because after all, even though they're not in power now, but they were powers. You have to list Beis Hamikdash because They don't want to mentioning anything for the Jews, and even as the Tsar, the Churban bias, nonetheless, they will want that because it's not giving cover to us, it's giving cover to their past remembrances. That's what we're holding. The next thing was if you're in the west and the east to west, Hayamisa, of course, of Myrav, man. Who, right? Who you're writing where? When you're writing it, is it where the Baal is now? Ilem a Baal, Hainu Shino Shmayu Shma Shemir Shemira. You're in the east, and you're in New York City, and you write Los Angeles. Now you're not in Los Angeles, you're in the east, or you're in Los Angeles and you write New York. So that's the same equivalent that Shino Shmayu Shma, which is listed later in the Mishnah, fellas. That's listed later in the Mishnah. In other words, it can't be Mizrach Umayr is going on the husband and you're changing, because that will be the same as the latter part of the Mishnah. So obviously, if the latter part of the Mishnah introduces it, it must be the east-west in the beginning of the Mishnah. It's not speaking about what? Different cities. So what is it? So it can't be speaking about the Baal. What are we speaking about? Elulav Sefer. It's speaking about the Sefer. Rav would tell the scribes when they'd be writing a get. The Talmud of Rav also would say to his Sefer, when you're sitting in Shili and you're writing a get, kisuvu b'shili v'afagav the musu l'chumili behini. Okay, you're in Shili. You write Shili, even though the get's going to be given in Mili. You write, if you're in New York, you write New York, even if the get's going to be given in LA. You write where you are, b'shas ksiva, not b'shas mesira. So again, I'm just changing the words, Shili, New York, and Los Angeles, right? If you're in Los Angeles versus New York, the same thing. So it's not going on the bow, because that would be Shini Shma Shma. It's going on the Sefer. Rav Yehuda Mishmuel says Yehuda Mishmuel, Zu Divrei Reb Meir. This is Reb Meir, that a get is puzzled because Shalom Malchus is Kol Mashanim Atbeya, Amachom Moimrim Afilu Leikosav El L'Shem Santa Shebeir. Even if you go ahead and write the get in the name of it's much from the land registrar, the guy who's in charge of boundaries. Your boundaries here. The guy when you get your title search that says that your house is here. It gives you the exact specs. So they had this guy was in charge of specs. This and that. This is like it's a low job. That would be enough. That would be enough for Shalom Malchus. That you listed it to shame this person. Is Sedanra the Baskar. It was written not L'Shem Malchus, but it's written in the shame the governor of Baskar. Sholcher of Nachum bar Rav Chisda l'Kamei de Rabba ki agav nemai. Is that considered enough Shalom Malchus that it should not possible to get? Or no, it's too low level of a position to possible to get? Sholach le'bahai afil Rameya Moida. Rameya Moida even here that it would be a good get. My time up. This governor was appointed by the Malchus. So by giving covet to this governor, you give covet to the Malchus. What's the difference between the land registrar with that the Rebbe may would disagree and say it's not a good get? Hassam over there, Zilu Milsa. Hachashvilu Milsa. Okay, I'm saying shir now, so I just want to wish you a good Shabbos. I really appreciate the call, Mickey. Enjoy. My only daughter-in-law that calls. Have to be nice. It's very funny about daughter-in-laws. When they get engaged, they call, and as soon as they get married, they never call. They call the mother-in-law. They never call the father-in-law. Seems to be something part of Judaism, right? Again, I'm not complaining, but just sharing. I always say, I'm not complaining, just explaining. That's what my wife says. Okay, anyway. So very, very interesting Gemara, a very nice Gemara. So the land registrar is a person that is in not such a high position. So therefore, you're not giving cover to the Malchus. So Reb Meir, you're not giving cover to the Malchus. The whole reason Shalom Malchus is not a good get. Like the Chachamim, they said, you know what? Even that will be enough. But Reb Meir will be moided by the governor, which is a more prestigious position. You'll be giving cover to the Malchus. They'd be moided that get, in fact, will be a good get. Amarav Abba, Amarav Huna, Amarav Zudiv Reb Meir. These are the words of Reb Meir. That right, all the thing we said. Teitzei Bavad Mamzer, Acham Moim Mavlad Kasha. The Vlad is Kasha. If you get married with this get, the Vlad is a good get. The Vlad is a good get right from the. In other words, if you get married, the Vlad from the second husband, guys, right? The Vlad from the second husband, that's the Shaila of Mamzeres Deraisa, correct? Fellas, remember, the only Shaila of Mamzeres Deraisa is the second husband because she wasn't ever divorced from the first. So if you get with divorce, Rabbi is saying, that Chacham was saying, if you get divorced with this, the child from the second marriage will be kosher. Okay, and that din that they said the child's not a mamzer is only case number one, where you got married based upon a get where you listed the wrong malchus. But they would be moida by shinei shmayu shma. It would be a good get. It would not be a good get, and therefore the child from the second marriage will be a good mamzer. Okay, guys, outside. We said this commonality of the Mishnah was that we're listing all cases where basically a woman's life gehakted service. The first case was changing malchus, right? Changing malchus. The second case was changing names, and then the third and fourth cases was a case of yibum. And okay, we'll see in a second. Okay, now this case is subject to a machloikis that the child is a mamza from the second husband. Loit Reb Meir, she was never divorced. Child's a mamza. Loit the Chachamim, the child from the second marriage is kasha because she was divorced. That's only in the scenario where the mistake in the get was you didn't list the correct malchus. However, in the second scenario, where you wrote a get and it wasn't your name, you wrote a get and it wasn't your city, even the Chachamim would be moida that it's not a get at all, and therefore, if you marry a second man that you are marrying, she's an Ashes Ish, and the child will be a mamzer. So again, that's what it says. Okay, says the Gemara. How do you know that? Amar Avashi Afanonami Tanina. We also have a raya. Shino Shmo Yishma Shemir b'Shemira Teitzi Mizel Mizeh v'Chaladrachim Elu Ba. Now, Haman Ketanila. Who learned this? Ilim Reb Meir le'Arvinu v'Lisninu. Why don't you go ahead and mix it all together, fellas? What happened? Let's go. Let's go. Go outside. Watch, guys. Watch. Case scenario one. You went ahead and you told me you got the wrong malchus. The Mishnah lists everything. Boom. Good. You list everything. Boom. Case number two. You go ahead and what? And Shino Shma Yishma. Now, and then it says, and everything happens to this. If the halacha was that the Chachamim argue in both cases, put it together over here, if they would agree. Put it together over here, case one, case two, and then after case two, list all the gehakted service that's going to happen to her. You didn't do that. You listed case one and gehakted service. You listed case two in gehakted service. Why do you list case two in gehakted service? Because case one, you're not of gehakted service. So the Chachamim disagree with Reb Meir by case number one by changing the name of the malchus that you're not of gehakted service. When are they moida? By Shino Shma Yishma, because that's the whole reason that we listed you of gehakted service for the Chachamim. Because like Reb Meir, you could have put it all together, but you didn't. That's the beautiful raya. Shma Mino, we have a raya that the Chachamim agree by Shini Shma Yishma that it's not a get at all. Thus, she was never married to the second husband. Thus, any child from the second union is a mamzer. Now, we said two cases of Yavamis, guys. What were the two cases of Yavamis? One, the first case was where his daughter and its son is falling. The second case was where two women are falling. In the first case, you found out that the daughter was an islandess, and the tzara married. She's like gehakted tzaris. Second case, you went ahead and did yibum to one of the two that you could have. Found out the one you did yibum to is a islandess, and the second one's of gehakted tzaris. Why do you have to tell me two cases? Says the Gemara, Kol Rosh Amru Nisu in Dafka. If the Yavama gets married, is she of gehakted tzaris? Zinu loy. What happens if she would have had an affair? she was mizana. In other words, her husband dies. She falls yibum to the brother. She falls yibum to the brother. She's mizana, right? Mashma, she would be able to go back to the brother. That an act of znus would not aser the shemeres yavam on the brother. Nisu in zinuloi. Let me have it here to Rav Hamnuna. Let's say it's what? It's an upshlag of Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna, shemeres yavam, he says in Yisayt Daf Yudches, shemeres yavam shezinsa, a shemeres yavam that is mizana, a surah yavama should be asa to yavama. So dafka if she marries, is she asa to go? Dafka if she marries a second one, is she asa to go back? But if she's mizana, she could go back. That's a kasha on Rav Hamnuna. Says Gemara, loy nisu v'hu adin lezina. Don't make the diak dafka if she marries, but if she's mizana, she'd be permitted. No. Really, if she's mizana, she's also not permitted, like Rav Hamnuna. Tani nisu. So why do you learn nisu? She gets married rather than say zinu. Lishnamal, you're not good. You know what? We don't want to go ahead and have a scenario of an avera. So she gets married, even though she shouldn't have gotten married, but she thought she would be able to. That's a lashon ma'alya. But to say that she's mizana, that would not be. To tell me that Allah in that scenario is not so proper. The ikka the army. There's another say. This is a raya to Rav Hamnuna. Nisu v'hu adin lezinu. Nisu, if she gets married, v'hu adin lezinu, the halacha would be that she is usher, like a Rav Hamnuna. Leimer b'sayla Rav Hamnuna. The Rav Hamnuna shemeres yavam shezinsa asuli yavama. Loi nisu dafka. Dafka is what? If she marries, then she's messed up. Then she's off kahak tzaris, and she'll be usher to marry the yavam. Mishum the michlafa be'isha shaholich ba'alim din sayam. Of course, we may go ahead and make a mistake by a case of a woman whose husband went to Medina Sayyam and he took her back. We'll see Rashi in a second. So therefore, over here, but Zinu, we don't have to worry about that. She would be permitted. Let's see Rashi over here, guys. This last case. Again, what are we saying? Really, Nisu is only then is she of Kahak Tzaris. If she was Mizana, she could go back. So why did you learn Nisu? Right? Why? Who adin Zinu? No, Dafka Nisu, because now, what are we worried about? Here's the concern. Rashi says, here's the concern. The Michla go up a little bit. The Michla be'isha shalach ba'alam din sayam. Woman's husband goes overseas. Ubav amrullah, and they go tell her, Meis ba'alech, your husband's dead. So what's the halacha? Because she can remarry. Benisas, and she remarries. And then the husband shows up. Dasrina leila mahader. He can't take her back. The afal pisha ba'oinis, even though she married ba'oinis, mishum shema yomru girish rishain. Maybe people might say she married the first person. V'nasa zeh married the second person. V'chaza rishain v'chzira la'acha gerusha sheni. And he was machshir krushaso, that the first husband took back a woman that he divorced. The halacha is a man can divorce his wife and remarry her, provided she doesn't marry ben tayim. If a person goes ahead and divorces his wife, as long as she doesn't remarry and he's not a Kohen, he can take her back. However, if she remarries, he can't. So what we're concerned over here is she remarried. She remarried based upon the report that her husband was dead, right? And now the second husband gives her a get. She doesn't go back to the first husband. People are going to say that what? People can say that a first husband, it wasn't that he divorced her, and now he's taking her back, right? And Nimsa that what? The Nimsa machshir gushasoy mishinisas achnami armin hacha shema yomru chalet zeh. He gave a chalitza. V'nasa zeh, she married the second guy, and then what? And then the first one will take her back if the chalitza. So avos nus less la kolo kulehai. Snus doesn't have a call that she remarried. Or made the yoda that pritzusa have people will know that was an act of pritzis. Okay, so we want to go ahead and say the following. You want to say when it says that the Yavama marries and turns out that it was an islandess, and therefore the marriage wasn't a marriage, right? Dafka, if she married somebody else, you can't take her back. But if she was Mizana, you could take her back. So in the first Lashon, the Lashon is that no, she's Mizana, you also can't take her back. And the reason we learn Nisu is Lashon Ma'alya, more a Shena Lashon, a nicer Lashon. In the second one, second Ikadiyami, whether she married or whether she was a Mizana, you can't take her back. The Gemara says, no, you have no raya. maybe if she was Mizana, you could take her back. What's the reason you can't take her back if she goes ahead and marries? Because this is similar to the case of Machzor Grusha. So a woman marries based upon the fact she thought her husband was dead. Turns out the husband was what? Alive. Now she gets a get from the second husband. The first husband can't take her back because people are going to think she got divorced from the first husband, not knowing that she married based upon the edus that he was dead. And they'll say a person can take back his wife after she receives a get. So who then over here? If she gets married, people are going to say, why could she get married? Because she was a chalutza, she got chalitza, and that's why she didn't have to marry a yavam. Now, if the second marriage she has to leave because it was an islandess, you can't take her back. Why? Because people are going to say that look, machzor chalutza soy would be permitted. Therefore, but in Achinami Zinu, if she would have Nisana, you will be able to take her back. Okay, so now we had two cases. Again, the case of Erva and the case of we had a case of Erva and the case of two tsaris. Using our knowledge of Yavamis, before we see the Gemara, guys, outside, in the scenario where a man's daughter falls to him, have a great Shabbos. Saying share. In the scenario where the daughter and a tzara are falling, is there any zika? No zika, right? Because the fact that she's an erva, right? There's no zika. That path is the tzara. In the case where there are two women and none of them is an erva, there's a zika, correct? The zika is taken off when he marries one, but both of them fell in front. In the first scenario, the tzara did not fall at all. In the second scenario, the tzara did fall. He didn't opt to marry her, he opted to marry the other one. With that in mind, let's see what we got. You need to tell me both cases. The case of the daughter, the erva, right? He was not the kind of mitzvahs of Yibam at all. He didn't marry anyone. The kind of mitzvahs Yibam, where he married one, she turned out to be an islandess, but he was kind of mitzvah. I'd say that the second one's not messed up. The second case, Mishum de Karamya Kamei, because both were seen in front. Abul Hassan, and those both he had a zik on both. Abul Hassan, but by the erva, right? The Ramya Kamei, that the tsaras erva never came in front of him. Maloi, I would see she's not messed up. If she gets married, said Tzricha to tell me that she is. Tzricha to tell me that she is. Guys, you good? Kasav Seifer, V'tov v'nas and get leisha v'shayver. Rabbi Eliezer Omer L'alta Yatzav. Rabbi Eliezer said, if L'alta, if you go ahead on and you get married, then it's right. We said it's not a good get, but lachas man it is a good get. Now we wanted to what I mean L'alta lachas man. Eliezer Omer L'alta Yatza. It's not a get, and if you got married after this man, it is a good get. Heichidami, but L'alta. What does it mean L'alta? When it said in the Mishnah that she gets married L'alta, it's not a good get. Again, this is the case where you had to switch your rule with the shaver and Heichidami. Lachas man. What's lachas man? Amrav Yudam and Shmuel. Kol zman sheyoshvin v'asukim boisa inyan. They're speaking about gerushin. Zeh L'alta. Right. In other words, the whole time they're speaking about Gitin. They stop speaking about Gitin. Zeh lachas man. So if the whole time they're speaking about gerushin, then you go ahead and make the switch. In that case, it would not be what? It would not be a good get. If they stop speaking about that, then in that case, what? It would be okay. Okay. Rav Adam Rava Amar, Loi Nisas Adayin, if you didn't get married, Zeu Nechshav La'alta. That's considered La'alta. Nisas, if you do get married, that's La'achas Man. Okay. Tanan, what do we learn on Mishnah? That Im La'achas Man Yotza get me at Abal, Loi Koli Minam in a Rishon La'abitz Kusashil Sheni. If the get comes out from the hands of the Baal, right? Again, he got it mistakenly. She gave it to him. she doesn't have an ability to ma'abed the schus of the second husband. Now, Bishlam Ravada Barava, who said la'achazman means marriage, Tani Sheni. There's a Baal Sheni. El Shmuel said la'achazman just meant after you stop being oisib begitin, my la'achazman. Where's the Sheni over here? It says where's schus roy l'sheni? The schus that means la'achazman, the schus that's roy l'sheni, that he's not neman to go ahead and to stop her the schus of being able to marry the second person. So again, two pshatim. According to Rebbe Loza, Baal has the get when he shouldn't have it. She has the shaver. Ibn Alter, according to one pshat, is still busy with Oisip Inyan. After Oisip Inyan, she couldn't remarry. Second pshat, if she didn't marry yet, no sus. Does marry, yes, no get. Right. And the Gemara says, Mishnah says that he loses the schus. Bishleim, like the one who says to get married, you lose the schus that be able to go ahead and mess up the second husband. Like the first pshat that's speaking about la'achazman, she never got married yet. It's just speaking about that she could get married. What does sheni mean? It's not ma'abed the schus of the second one to get married. Wish you all a good Shabbos. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.